Rob. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are things going?
Going pretty well. Yeah, I think David said he was not gonna show up for a couple of weeks or something
Yeah,
like
I think, yeah, he said till August 9th. And also Rose has COVID, so she won't be joining us.
that. Oh, darn.
And
Is
she
she doing
just got
okay?
back. I don't know. She said she just got back from vacation, but she has COVID. So yeah, it looks like most people end up being okay, but these new variants are not as bad, but they're very, very kind of infectious, I guess.
Yeah, there's a guy who's sort of the chief infectious disease specialist at Indiana Medical School. He's a tennis playing friend of mine, so we were traveling to a tournament, and this was or just when COVID was getting started. And he kind of outlined sort of the process that we were likely to see based on previous viruses. One of the things he emphasized is that there'll be a bunch of mutations, and generally they become more infectious and less dangerous.
Yeah. I think that's what happened to the Spanish flu, like all of the previous like big pandemics. But still, I think it could still kill like people with compromised immune systems or older people, right? So it's not like completely harmless.
No. And, that happens with regular flus as well.
That's true. Yeah.
And yeah, pneumonia.
Yeah. They were saying it's almost as infectious as measles now, which is basically you get it if somebody has it in the place, you're going to get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been recently, I spent, I don't know, 20 minutes in a small office with a guy who said he came down with it the following day and tested himself.
Okay. Well, I mean, there is still some weird stuff because my partner, she got it like a few months ago and I didn't get it. Like I tested negative. She had the symptoms. It wasn't that bad. Like it lasted about a week of coughing and having fevers, but I got nothing. So it is possible.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm one of those people who are immune.
Well, I'm kind of hoping I get it anyhow, just kind of get it over with and sort of build up that set of immunities.
Seems like it only lasts a few months though. There are people who get it multiple times over a few months.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'd rather not get it for as long as I can. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, I just don't want to get it when I'm traveling someplace.
Which is the most likely time, I guess.
Probably, yeah. Although, yeah, my wife and I went to New York 2 weeks ago. Crowded elevator, there's lots of people. So I was kind of half expecting to come back with some variant.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I hope they don't start putting on all the restrictions and everything. Yeah, in BC, they're already talking about it. So the mask mandates and all that other stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But here, I guess people are more scared. So I think in general, Canada is more scared compared to US. So
I wonder why.
I don't know. It's kind of like Europe, I guess, with the exception of Scandinavian countries and Eastern Europe, I guess. I don't know. It's just a cultural thing, I guess.
Oh, perhaps. I mean, I don't view the mask as a big thing one way or another, unless you're doing something like trying to teach a class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen people like recording videos on Zoom. Like there's like 4 people sitting in the audience and they're doing an online lecture and they're wearing a mask. And it just makes it impossible for me to pay attention to them. Like there's something about seeing the person talk. Otherwise you just get bored.
Yeah, and there are people sort of more audially impaired people who kind of need that assistance to try
Yeah.
and parse out the words, and it's really tough on them.
Yeah, that's true. It does also muffle your sound a little bit, so it
Yep.
doesn't help. Anyways. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can talk quickly about the
Yeah. So,
lecture thing.
I mean, this would be great if you could do it. So I guess, I mean, there are lots of different ways to go with this. You know, we can talk about the things you suggested. So why don't we start with that? Something that's easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is I guess I'm a perfectionist. I want to make sure at least a few people get something out of it. I can't just show up and like do my thing and nobody cares about it. I would feel bad about it. So I want to make sure that at least it's useful in some way.
Oh yeah, it's unquestionably going to be useful. So, but I don't want it to be, you know, the standard of perfection makes things too hard.
Yeah.
So just, you know, view it like an informal conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can do the El Farol thing because I'm pretty excited about it. I did a short, like one of those 6-minute talks on it, so I can expand on it a little bit.
Okay.
And it does relate, and I do plan on pursuing the AI side of it. It is an old problem. Yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
could you give me a kind of quick overview of it?
Yeah, so do you remember when I explained the El Farol bar problem a while ago? I mean, it's a simple thing. It's from Brian Arthur, who you might know. He used to be a famous economist, I think in the 50s. So he has a bunch of books written after this paper. So this paper was sort of his one of his main works. So he basically used to work in the Santa Fe Institute with the complexity. So he came up with this sort of, since then, I think people have named this kind of game in terms of, in the sense of game theory. I think it's called minority game or something like that. So the idea is basically there's a bar in town every Thursday. Everybody wants to go because there's an Irish band playing, or there's whole like a story behind it that makes it a little bit fun. And there is room for 60 people to sit. So everybody in town wants to go if there's less than 60 people in the bar, so they can get a seat. And if there is no seat, they don't want to go. So that's the preference of the people. But in advance, you don't know how many people will be. So you have memory of, let's say, past M weeks, 5 weeks. And based on that, you want to decide whether you should go or not. And you don't communicate with anybody. Nobody tells you anything about it. It's just based on your own experience of previous weeks. And then you get, let's say 100 people are in town and they basically independently have their own memories and they decide whether they should go or not. And the game basically evolves. And you can sort of prove that there is no analytical solution of what you should do. There is, because whatever you do, other people can think that if everybody thinks you're going to do that, they're going to do the opposite. And then you get these oscillatory behavior and it never converges. So for any individual, it's impossible to optimize basically what is the best over time. So that's sort of the main message of the thing, that individuals cannot optimize. And also, but what the cool thing that happens is that the town as a whole solves the problem. So 60 people on average end up showing in the bar every week. It's just not the same 60 people. It's just overall things average out and 60 people. So basically the town as a whole is sort of like a collective intelligence that solves this problem, but each individual is not really, cannot really be that smart because of the nature of the game. So then it sort of brings up questions about who is the agent. Is the town the agent and is solving the problem? Is every person an agent? And the angle I wanted to pursue is, let's say I am one of those agents and everybody's just using their whatever 5 past week experience to do a very simple decision. And I'm like a reinforcement learning agent. I want to be smarter than everybody else. Can I beat the game and outsmart everybody so that whenever I go, I get it right and everybody else is just doing their thing? So that was sort of my angle.
Yeah, that's a really interesting interaction. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, and there is like a whole bunch of extensions that I wanted to pursue. Like, let's say you get to communicate with your 5 best friends and you tell them whether to go or not. You try to coordinate. You could lie to them, say you're not going so that they don't go, so that there's more room for you. You can communicate with everyone. So I feel like there is a whole bunch of regimes. Like once you turn on the communication between people, they can coordinate.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah. So you is this I mean, these are kind of like just multi-agent simulations, right?
Yeah, so basically I have the simulation that does that. It doesn't have any visuals, but it has, I can generate plots. So that's
Sure.
sort of what I showed in my previous talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I plan on adding the visuals and all that stuff. So I think it's basically like a market, right? I mean, that's why Brian
Mhm.
Arthur was interested in it. So in that sense, I thought it might be interesting to your students. Also, I wanted to sort of make the point that is this, so this is like from the 50s, right? I mean, people have done some work, but it's basically died out. So in that sense, I'm not the best person to talk about the newest, greatest thing, because I'm sort of, I wish I was born like 40 years earlier, because I'm still excited about all this stuff in the 50s to 80s, like the whole cybernetics movement, the Brian Arthur stuff, and somehow all those interesting stuff died out in favor of deep learning, which is kind of boring to me now. But yeah, I'm hoping to make some connection between the new stuff and the old stuff, like make a point that the old stuff is still worth paying attention to, in a sense that there are a lot of unsolved problems that just were abandoned for no other reason than historical accidents.
Yeah, no, I'm constantly sort of rediscovering things. And in fact, sort of every time I come up with an idea, I think, oh, that's interesting. I kind of just think, okay, yeah, who's already done this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff have been done, but I think one thing I keep discovering is when they were working on this stuff, even this El Faro, like there wasn't powerful computers, there wasn't GPUs. So revisiting some of these old problems with bigger compute might actually be very fruitful.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff around it that I find like the whole like complexity I was going through. Yeah, I don't have the book here. I'm going down the rabbit hole of complexity, and seems like a lot of people have worked on it for many years, a lot of very smart people, but somehow I guess we don't hear about it. And I don't know whether they failed or nobody paid attention, or I guess it's kind of hard to, maybe the people who are making money off of it, they don't talk about it, and people
That's, if that were true, you'd know about it generally.
no, because the markets will readjust, and I guess you will know.
Yeah, I mean, people will sniff that out. I mean, in the same way, if there's a really good trader, really good hedge fund, you won't necessarily know what they're doing, but you'll know they're there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the cool aspects of this problem, again, is, I guess it's just, I think it's a common thing about markets, right? Like you have some local information that you can exploit for your own good. So you might not be smarter than everybody else, but you might have a piece of the information that's very critical and you can take advantage of it. And that could be true for the bar as well, right? Because depending on your experience in the last few weeks, you might know something about the system that others don't, even though they have maybe longer memory or something better. So just the luck of what you know, I think it's also interesting to study.
Yeah, so what, I mean, I haven't worked through at a high level sort of the conceptual part and the math part, but it seems to me that one ought to be able to replicate financial intermarkets with transactions and market clearing prices and quantities in this type of framework, and simultaneously to try and do the types of things that you just mentioned. So make some changes in kind of who knows what. So there's a branch in finance called microstructure. And a lot of what gets done really kind of fits under that framework. So for example, you've got a market, and in that market, you've got one person who has better information than the others. So what happens? What do the dynamics of like price changes look like.
Mhm.
Other ones, some people in the market know things earlier than others. So everybody eventually observes it, but there's going to be a lag. So for example, you can think of people getting together, a small group of people getting together on some trading floor, and they can observe what's going on kind of around them, and then prices get reported and get disseminated to the outside world.
Mhm.
So there's, some lag period between where the rest of the people get to observe it and the direct participants observe it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's that. And these are actually just, these are really important policy issues. So you'll look at different regulatory agencies around the world. They're involved in this stuff.
Mhm.
They're trying to figure out rules that make this stuff work better or worse or stuff like that. So yeah, I'd really like to kind of continue some of these conversations, because this is going to be really important in my area.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I think that's great, because I don't have the domain knowledge that you have, obviously, in economics and finance, and I don't really want to learn it. But if somebody has that and you say this is the right problem to work on, and these are the inputs, and this is what you would like to get out of it, I think that would make it a lot more interesting to me, at least, because I don't have to go spend years learning finance and economics.
Yeah, to me, this seems like arbitrage.
Exactly, exactly. But maybe the other thing I wanted to, on this, on the same vein, maybe I pick your brain on this. So as I mentioned, I'm sort of transitioning to a new role at my new job. So it's probably going to start maybe next week or the week after. So I get to do maybe around half of my time some kind of research. So it needs to be applied research. So I need to connect it to some industry or something. And also, I guess, make a case why it's useful for Amy in general, or the clients that are coming in the future. So I wanted to, I'm usually super ambitious and I pick things, but for this first one, this is going to be a trial. And they never had a position like this at Amy. So they want to see if it is useful or not.
So this is still University of Calgary or University of Alberta?
Well, it's not a university. So Amy is a nonprofit institute. So we have fellows. So the fellows who are the professors, they are mostly in University of Alberta. So there's around, I think, 20, 30 of them that could choose to participate in some of this stuff. So the part I'm in is the part with the clients. So the mandate is to support Canadian companies, anyway, from startups to big. It doesn't even have to be Canadian, but in general, companies or economy of Canada. So they need to have a Canadian sort of office and try to do AI. So I'm in the advanced technology section, which means that the kind of projects that take about a year or two. So they sign a contract, pay us some money, and then it's a little bit subsidized by the Canadian government, and we do something for them and in different domains. So that's sort of the original version of the job. But the problem was that I was sort of hired as a lead, which basically I didn't realize at the time. It meant I don't actually do any work. I basically go tell people, okay, this is the scope. And I just sort of, I was a glorified middle manager with some technical input, which I didn't like. So that was the reason I was leaving. And they said, okay, if you want to do hands-on work, we can handle that. So they're giving me maybe 4 to 6 months as a first project. And I can come up with anything that I think is useful that I want to build out or test out, and this is independent of any particular company. So it could be anything, but it needs to be applied. Like I can't go and do like pure theoretical research just for my own liking. Yeah, so I wanted to see, I guess, I get confused when I start thinking about this much, like there's not enough constraint for me to find a solution. So I start questioning my own life values and stuff. Like, are you doing this to make a product? Are you doing this to learn something new? Are you doing this There's a lot of reasons for doing different kinds of things. I wanted to see how you would, like, based on your experience, if somebody gave you like some chunk of time to do some kind of applied research, how would you approach it? I guess I know you would pick different things because you like different things, but in general, like what is your thought process in deciding? So I needed to be successful, or at least have a high chance of success, at the same time something that is maybe interesting.
So is this more in the RL space, or is it more general than that?
It could be more general. So I can tell you the two sort of areas that I picked for now, like I wanted to do. So one is, we had two companies that I worked with since I've been with Amy on the logistics and supply chain management section. So one thing I noticed is, like, going back to the theme of like old school versus new school. So old school, as you probably know, used to be all operations research and optimization back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And those things are really well developed. You can buy software that just do all that stuff for you. And then at some point they all died, and then we have AI, RL, whatever. So RL is this subsection of operations research, but in practice, it doesn't really work. Like, because it's like this kinds of problems you're talking about are so big and nobody has a simulator. So usually people haven't been using it as much. So what happened is, now the OR people, the traditional optimization people, don't respect RL or AI or deep learning as much. And then the people in RL community don't even know what OR is. Like, most people who have gone to school studying reinforcement learning don't know what operations research is. So my idea was to build a little platform with some toy examples and try to implement algorithms from both, compare it, and make it publicly available so other people can come in and plug in their own simulators and algorithms and try to play with it. So that's sort of the first idea.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of people that I know that have interest in that would yeah, I know two people. And I can see if I can yeah, I mean, maybe get the four of us at least, or any number of other people who you'd like as well.
Are they professors or?
Yeah, academics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, one general theme that I've noticed in just being at Amy for a few months is, you can probably speak to that more, like academics, maybe that's just the nature of the job. They get really invested into their own domain, and they're either hostile or like ignorant about other things outside of their domain. I'm just generalizing a little bit. I'm sure there are
sometimes both.
Yeah, it could be both. And I find that that's an opportunity for someone like me, because I'm not a specialist in anything. I don't care if RL ends up being useless. It's a sure, I'll go to do something else. But if somebody has spent 20 years studying RL, I don't think they would accept that RL is useless. So like, I feel like I want to be at the border of these different types of domains where I don't have a dog in the fight, and then I can sort of see really what works and what doesn't and pick the best of both.
Yeah, okay, so that's one. You said you had another one too.
Yeah, so the other one is sort of the intersection of RL with control theory. So I think, so going back again, I mentioned cybernetics and stuff. So AI used to be all control theory. So people were trying to solve it with these feedback systems and nonlinear control. And at some point it turned into, from analog to digital, and turned into like what we call AI now. But more concretely, I was sort of interested in the intersection of robust control, which is a subsection of classical control theory, and RL. And so the idea is, RL, I think we talked about this briefly before, is like it tries to maximize some reward at all costs, right? So it's not about safety, stability, robustness, whereas control theory is not maximizing it. It's just trying to reduce the error. It's all about the stability and control. And there's a lot of mathematics that have been developed to keep things stable, or prove whether they could be controlled or not, whether they could be stable or not. And I think these two sort of communities are very separate. They don't know each other. So I'm trying to, again, bring it together. I think it's already happening. It's going in the right direction.
Let's see if I can pull something. Um, all right, this is going to take a while. Let me see if I can dig this stuff up. There's a branch of thought that sort of tries to integrate machine learning and sort of dynamic optimization together.
Mhm.
I mean, I just recently became, like in the last 6 months or so, became aware of this stuff.
Oh, that's the stuff you guys shared last time, right? With
Yeah, well,
can't
yeah,
remember.
David was talking a little bit about it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so yeah, you've seen that then.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing I'm super interested in, but at the same time, I'm a little bit worried. It seems like a very theoretical, very complicated field. Like it's unlikely to give me anything in 4 to 6 months. So I don't know what you would go and build up on top of it. Which is fine. I mean, it's nothing which is great, but
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there are a couple of things that do kind of jump out at me. So one is trying to build a trading engine.
mhm.
Okay, so by that I mean, can you figure out? Okay, so if you want to trade a block of stock, you've got a couple choices. You could sell it all now. You could sell it slowly over time. So if you sell it all now, the people taking the opposite side of that trade, or if it's a big chunk, are likely to think, okay, wait a minute, this person knows something that I don't. That's why they're selling it. I better lower my price. Now,
But doesn't that automatically happen anyway? Because if you suddenly increase the supply, the price drops automatically. Is that why it drops, or is it because people think that there's a reason for it?
well, if we're looking at a stock, usually we know there's a fixed amount of shares out there outstanding. But what we don't know is sort of who's going to want to do what when.
Mhm.
So, if people try and sell, 100,000 shares of a company, usually they're going to see a price decline of, 2-3%, something like that, when they do that. And that's the market's way of saying, okay, this may be nothing, and it may be something important. Therefore, I'm just going to kind of take the average of those, and that's going to give me the 2%. Okay, so that's door number one. Door number two is, okay, maybe I don't sell this aggressively. Maybe I distribute it out over days. And that way people, aren't going to be scared of taking the opposite side of my position. And perhaps, I'll collectively get a better price. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. So one of the key components of that is what it costs to do trading. Okay, so I've been thinking about sort of how to represent that, and I've got some ideas on that. But the other part of the problem is, if you know what the trading is, or sorry, if you know sort of what the state of the market is, or you can predict that, then you kind of got to figure out what to do. And that's sort of where the RL part comes in. Okay, so this is a way of saying if you were looking at an entity like the Toronto Stock Exchange, which is actually, at least, historically sort of been an innovator in doing some things. These types of experiments would be of interest to them because what they're in the business of is essentially trying to promote trading, trying to promote interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And are there things that they can take from their existing data and make available to the investors that help improve the quality of the markets, make bid-ask spreads smaller and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that is an area that would probably be worth thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the whole area of education,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, education in the next 10 years is going to look a lot different than, or it should look a lot different than what it looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think at university level. So we should be able to create, tutors, if you will, that would really customize themselves to the student.
You mean like virtual tutors?
Virtual tutors, yeah. So that's going to be a function sort of identifying the student's learning style
Mm-hmm.
and sort of adapting the material to them and doing it in sort of a rational way. So if the student has done 3 problems in a particular area and gotten those correct, they probably don't need a 4th and a 5th and a 10th.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just as a mechanism then for conveying that information. And then the role of the instructor, I think, is going to differ because what they're going to do is instead of standing up and, kind of doing the Facebook post, if you will, sort of a one-to-many. So, I mean, that's what I do right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not terribly efficient. So what the instructor would do would be to sort of oversee the individual student's progress.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I really like it.
So, I mean, those are,
Yeah, I don't know. Can you think of a first step towards that? Because I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be solved until you have a fully functional product. I mean, one thing I can tell you what I had thought about, but then I can't see a market for it, so I wasn't sure whether it's worth the time. Like, so I play a lot of chess. There is a market for people who want to learn chess, and of course we have these powerful engines that tell you what's the optimal move. You can for all practical purposes, you can assume that's the best move at any position. But even grandmasters, when they look at the computer, sometimes they don't know why that's the best move. And at lower levels, it's easier. Like when you make a bad move, there's very clear reasons why that's a bad move. And it probably also gives you a lot of information about your level of knowledge about the game and what you should be working on. So there are very rudimentary sort of virtual coaches that you go on these chess.com or something. Like you don't castle, you get checkmated, you say, oh, go look at the lesson about castling. Like that's the level. They don't actually understand. They probably have like big table. If you do these things, say this. If you do this, like a if then condition. But it seems like a very self-contained area where you can probably explore. Like if you can't solve this, you probably won't be able to solve like how to learn physics or something like that. But that being said, like if I build something like this, I don't know who would use it and how to sell it or because unless you plug it into one of these big sort of chess communities, you really know, and nobody's going to pay for it anyway. It's going to be completely free.
Well, one of the things that that I have wondered about is essentially trying to set up a consulting operation that would that would contract with VC guys and say, okay, let's bring sort of a machine learning focus to these product ideas. So what are they doing? Are they doing anything? If they're doing something, are they doing the right things? Can it be better? So what I would do is there got to be some big VC outfits in Vancouver, right?
Probably. I don't know. I know a couple of small ones that I have friends working at, but I don't know the big ones.
Well, okay, small ones, big ones. But I guess I would try to start a conversation there. And essentially what you were doing is you're bringing in a set of technologies that could be really useful to some of the companies that they're working with. And, you know, if you're thinking sort of, you know, near to, or, you know, quick path to commercialization, that might be one place to look.
I feel like it would be a hard sell to VCs because that's what their job is, you know, to be very critical, and like if you don't have anything.
But they don't know the stuff you know. They don't even know the stuff I know.
Right. The good ones, I hope, do. That's almost their job, right?
To be honest, what the I've seen empirical analyses that try and look at or try and ascertain factors that determine which companies get funded and which don't. And the primary criteria that is used is the team. Essentially, has the team been successful in doing things before? And if the answer is yes, they're much more likely to get funded. Okay, so, you know, maybe will they have people on board doing this, you know, specialized analytics? Maybe, and even if they do, you know, it may not be the best approach.
So you basically want a Moneyball VC.
Yeah, so let's just see here.
How would you even start that? Like, do you cold call them and talk about it, or like how would you even start that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And I mean, one thing I always thought was you need to build something first, like at some prototype to have to demo. Like if you just show up and talk about ideas, they probably, like I wouldn't pay attention to somebody who comes to me and says, okay, there's all these amazing ideas I can help you with, but I haven't even started on it. Give me money and I'll do it for you. I don't think that's very likely to succeed, right?
Well, I think, I mean, you know, the way I would approach it would be more, I'm working with this university affiliated research group, and one of the things that we're tasked with is trying to find applications that would benefit from these new technologies. Would you be interested in talking?
Oh, that's a good, yeah, that's a good angle, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see a bunch of VC guys here in Vancouver. I don't know about sort of what they're doing. So the VC companies are kind of like restaurants in that they tend to focus on a certain area. So, you know, you have a Mexican, you have a Chinese restaurant. They tend to focus on sort of, yeah, specific areas. Now, some are going to be more, you know, kind of traditional industrial stuff. Others will be more, you know, high-tech intellectual property.
Mhm.
So it's going to be a better fit with some than with others.
Mhm.
Um, let's see.
So what would be the idea? So let's say they are one as what you're envisioning is, so I would call them, say, talk about our services, and they would sort of make the connection to some of the companies in their portfolio, and that would be the engagement.
I would just sort of leave it open and say, you know, look, we're basically a bunch of sort of leading AI people, but we need to search for applications, and you guys are overseeing a portfolio of companies that are in different markets. And is there, you know, sort of a potential gain from starting a conversation?
I mean, I can see one direct avenue that I've seen work is sometimes the startups need to bid on a contract or get some government money. And the only way they could do that is to have some entity like Amy on board to say, okay, we're going to do the AI part. We have the expertise, and that would make their application go through. In which case, I guess they would subcontract us to do part of the work. And so we have seen that. So maybe that's one direct
Yeah.
avenue.
So now in that case, that might lead you a little more towards early stage companies. So are you familiar with the different funding stages?
Yeah, a little bit. Not all
Okay,
the
so
details.
like you got your seed, you got your Series A and stuff. So I would think that VC outfits that do the Series A funding, they might be the most receptive. So you're going to see that some, yeah, some companies, they might specialize in kind of later stage financing. So like generally got, you know, Series A, Series B, Series C, sometimes a D and an E. So some VC guys get in at the start and then they get out. It's like the, you know, stage B or C. So others come in at a stage C. So it's just, you know, kind of different,
Right.
different parts of that. But I guess I'm thinking that if they've already gotten like Series A or Series B money, there's going to be one or two things kind of happen. Either they've got their business plan and sort of technology rolling out, and it's working, so they're not going to be terribly interested. Or alternatively, maybe the world has changed and they're trying to transition into a new market. But, you know, one of the things then I think that'd be useful if you could do is sort of come up with a checklist of things that you guys can offer. So for example, suppose computer vision is part of it.
Mhm.
Okay, they're just, I mean, I'm continually sort of amazed at the applications of that I see.
Mhm.
So, I mean, one of the interesting ones around here was a company that developed a vision product for scanning the crops growing in a field and use that to, on a real-time basis, tweak the pesticide and fertilizer combination that was put down.
Yeah, we are working with a company doing exactly that. I can't say the name of the company, but it's a
Yeah.
US company.
And I look at that and I mean, this is a great example. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But you could see all kinds of sort of quality control applications of that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, so that's sort of part of my dilemma, right? I mean, I guess that's just a personal choice. I mean, if the point is to make money or to build a company, you go one direction. If your point is to do research and, I don't know, develop new things, I feel like that's a very different direction. Like, let's say this Alpharol stuff is not going to turn into a company anytime soon, but to create a machine vision system to maybe monitor crops, that's obviously a reasonable business path. So I kind of want to do all of it, but I have a hard time deciding which one is more interesting, and I end up spending a little bit of time on a bunch of different problems and end up not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you got to figure out, are you going to build the implements or are you going to be a farmer?
Right, right.
I think it's really tough to answer that question up front because you kind of don't know what the opportunities are.
Right.
Someone will come along and point to they'll see the world in a different way and they'll see, a real big opportunity that's not being served.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Basically, I think from your perspective, I'm just kind of guessing here, but you're probably more in the realm of making tools,
Mm-hmm.
And showing people how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly something you could do is this. I don't know. So there's a product called Crunchbase.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So one thing you could do is you could go into Crunchbase and you could say, okay, let me pull out every startup in a geographic region.
Mm-hmm.
And let me contact them and say, we're this AI group and we have these technologies and we would like to explore whether some of this might be useful for your business.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially you put together a presentation where you talk about the different areas, you talk about the things that can be done and how they can be done. And, you maybe have, 50 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe out of that 50, 10, 20% of them say, gee, I'd like to find out more.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I mean, you know, you could talk to the VCs, you could sort of bypass the VCs and go to the companies.
But I mean, they all at some point want to know, I guess, who's paying for it, right? Because our
Yeah.
fees are not small, right? And so it's always a barrier to some companies, even though it's called nonprofit, we still charge a fair amount for like a year-long project. Yeah, so that's why we usually wait for the companies to come to us, because then they're more willing to pay. Otherwise, if you go to the companies, they're saying, okay, they expect something to be a collaboration where they don't pay anything and they get something for free.
Well, you know, maybe you've got some sort of, you know, two scale or two level operation. Part of it is more an initial evaluation. You get to know a little bit about them. They get to know a little bit about you. And then you kind of take it from there. So, you know, part of the question is, how much would it cost these companies to do what they're trying to do without you guys?
Right.
And, you know, my hunch is if you got a bunch of interesting applied people, you might be cheaper, at least in terms of kind of getting stuff up and getting it working. And one of the big issues I think he would have to confront is intellectual property.
Yeah, we usually just give it completely away. It completely belongs to the companies we work with.
Okay.
We don't keep any of it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, we are being recorded, but to be honest, like if I were a company, it's not, yeah, it's not always the right choice to go to one of these outfits that do consulting and that have them build something for you. Sometimes it makes sense to hire a couple of good people, pay them enough money, and then have them focus on your problem and not go outside. For some places it makes sense, some places it doesn't. And I feel like I have a good sense for who it would suit and who it wouldn't. And our clients sometimes don't understand it as well. But so there's a bit of a conflict of interest, right? Like if you're a company and you go to one of these outfits and ask, can you help me? They're never going to say no, even though they might think that, okay, you're better off going and hiring your own people.
Well, I think I guess part of the answer then would be kind of depends on how far along the companies are sort of in their analytics process. And if you get to the early stage ones, you know, it might be a better fit there.
Yeah, I mean, we have multiple groups, right? Like we have a startup team, we have an industry team, and then we have us, which is the advanced tech team. So the startup team, I think, does that. They don't even sometimes even implement. They just give advice. Okay, these are the kinds of things you should focus on. These are the kind of people you need. And then the industry team is a next level up. These are sort of early stage startups where, again, they basically write reports. They go sit for a few days, talk about a particular problem. They come up with different solutions, and then they give a report of recommendations of what they think you should do. Again, no hands-on work. And by the time it gets to us is where it's been identified that, okay, this is a good fit for like a real 1 to 2 year project. And then we sort of get busy with it. So it's sort of like a funnel all the way from startups to.
All right, so you're basically already doing some of the stuff I was suggesting.
Yeah, so this is what Amy is doing. I guess I'm also trying to figure out what I am doing, either separate or to help out the process or to go sort of in a tangential direction. Yeah, I'm still like, it's, to be fair, like I guess I've changed so many companies now. I don't know where I'll be 10 years from now. Like when I joined MDA, I thought I would just retire there. That was my mindset. And then everything fell apart. And then I went to another one. Again, everything fell apart. So now I'm sort of, my mindset is, okay, I am not part of Amy. I'm working at Amy now. And then a couple of years from now, who knows, maybe I'm doing something else. So I'm trying to sort of, I guess this is what the kids do these days, you know, have their own personal brand, which is completely independent of what they do for a living. Even on LinkedIn, I've seen some people don't even put where they're working now. They just put in like, I am a whatever AI researcher. They don't say where because it doesn't matter. I can do it in different places. I'm starting to appreciate that that approach. But that being said, I mean, I don't have full freedom to go like spin off like IP and do things of my own, right? Like contacting companies, like we have a whole BD team that does that. That's their job, right? Like if I go on this side and start talking to people, I mean, I think they would like it, but at some point they would not. They would like to be looped in, and they would take all the credit.
Sure, that's one of the things they do. Yes.
I mean, that's basically that's what they spend their days doing, right? Like, although they haven't focused on cold calls, I think they just wait for companies to be referred to them or from previous clients, and then they sort of, I don't know exactly how they identify the opportunities, but I don't think we have ever talked to any VCs. So I think that's a new angle. I think we should look at that. I do have a friend in a VC in Vancouver, so I might just set up a meeting with him and see. He will give me like inside information about how receptive VCs in general would be to someone like me contacting them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what I've thought about again is just working with a VC kind of as a an AI implementation person.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, it kind of sounds like, you know, that's you've already got people sort of nosing around in that space to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So I mean, part of it then is, you know, if you're asking these questions, it to me suggests that these other guys aren't doing their job too well.
Yeah, yeah, I guess I don't get full visibility to everything they're doing. A lot of them are new, like they just got hired and they're expanding the team, so they're kind of slow. They are very focused on Alberta. I don't know, it's like a you probably get that too. So I guess some provinces, at least in Canada, are more nationalistic. Like they want to see Edmonton succeed. They don't see big enough picture. Like they don't go after like a company in China. I don't know. Like I would rather work. Like I don't know. I want to see how big it can get. I don't want to necessarily help the local businesses, right? I mean that's a fair point, but I mean it's just not. It could do more. Why would you want to limit yourself to a city?
Well, you know, you got to draw some boundaries. I mean, you know, you're a Canadian entity, and that's what you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, even Canadian is great. Like before I came in, now we have a lot of contacts to BC. Like they wouldn't even like people in BC didn't know what Amy is, even though it's like an hour flight from there. Like they don't, all their marketing, everything is focused on Edmonton, not even Calgary, like Edmonton, which is kind of odd to me, like very, very nationalistic, very closed system. But yeah, I mean, these are, I guess I don't want to necessarily change the way they do things. I just want to sort of find out what I should do.
I don't know if this is relevant, but what I see here is it's not sort of kind of a geographic focus, but it's sort of a network focused. Okay, so I know people around here. I want this to succeed because I'm affiliated with all these other people, and if it succeeds, I'm going to benefit from it. So it's it's a little more self-interest oriented, to be honest. And you know, that's one of the things that we face here is that people in the Midwest in the US are kind of reluctant to sort of branch out and try new businesses and fund new businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in sort of non-established areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's part of the reason why you see this big collection of VC guys concentrated in specific areas.
Right.
They're around where people are willing to do deals more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think also like in general, Canada is a lot more conservative in investments than US, right? Like there's very little money.
could
You
be.
have to basically have something already working and making money before they invest in you, which is not great. Not in, yeah, not conducive to having like a growing companies. And it's probably going to get worse and worse, with the current economic conditions. Like if it might already be impossible to raise money for anything that's not already working and making money.
It's going to be a little more challenging, but I mean, the folks who fund VC companies, they tend to be deep pocket individuals and institutions, and they realize that by doing this, they're getting access to new ideas and new companies sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, are generally going to get a higher rate of return over time.
Right.
So if the US, if the developed markets are looking kind of dicey,
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily going to dry up the VC funding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's all this new technology stuff coming out too, the biotech areas. And
Oh yeah, bio is huge. That's one of the other areas that, yeah, I've been thinking about getting into, but the domain knowledge is just really complex and takes many years to master. And I feel like that's one thing you can't really go into it without understanding at least the basic level of biology and where the challenges are. And I think in finance, it's more doable, like relying on somebody else's domain knowledge. But in biology, if you don't understand the basic terms, then you're lost. Like there's nothing, whatever you say is going to sound comical to somebody who's an expert biologist.
well, I just think finance is simpler than biology.
Sure. Yeah. And less jargon, like biology. Like even finance has a fair bit of jargon, but I mean, it's more intuitive. I can guess what the words mean, where in biology, like you really have to get into it to understand.
I don't know. Is there anything in insurance?
Insurance, okay.
I mean, I've been talking to some people in that area, and I kind of get the sense that it's sort of too traditionally actuarial based.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not an actuarial approach is not inherently bad, but in general, I think I could do better.
I mean, I think technically whatever they use as actuaries use is now branded as machine learning, right? It's like a typical statistics that they do.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, the way that most insurance products work is they partition risks into two parts. So what's the probability of the bad event occurring?
Mm-hmm.
And then conditional upon the bad event occurring, what's the cost? What's the loss going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then essentially you put those two together. Now, so that the interesting parts are, can you create meaningful simulations of what that world looks like? So if you can do that, then you can start to make much more intelligent choices about what to insure and how much to charge.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure they do this in some places, but most of the applications that I've seen are pretty crude in that regard.
Mhm.
And then there's sort of, how do these losses, how are they correlated?
Mhm. Makes sense.
So I think there's a lot of application there. I mean, in the healthcare space, I think there are lots of applications.
Yeah, healthcare is one that I've been trying to stay away from because of all the regulation and politics, and like getting data is hard, and all the stuff I've been chatting with Rose about. The data is probably dirty and it's really hard to get into it, I think.
Yeah, it could be. It is hard to get data, and like Rose has pointed out, it's really important to understand what the data is telling you.
Mhm.
But I gotta admit, I'm more optimistic about uncovering value even with what we have, just by looking at it intelligently, than Rose
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. By what we have, do you mean what the pharmaceutical companies have, or what we have in the public domain?
Yeah, sort of even in the public domain.
Okay.
In part because the experience I've had sort of, working in this area a little bit is, the sort of the leading experts in the area, to me, kind of all they have are kind of rules of thumb.
Mhm.
And I'm not downplaying that at all, but I'm also thinking, gee, um, I bet I could do better.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of ideas. Thank you.
But yeah, I don't know if any of those would be helpful. But yeah, I would call the VC guys, and just lay out what you could do, what you could offer, and try and get a sense of if there's interest.
Mhm. Mhm.
Talked to a couple, three of them. I can try and set up a meeting with Jonathan Helm and Amro Aweshe, where you could kind of interact with them and talk about some of the things you're doing.
Who are they? Sorry.
These are both university professors, both in the operations area. So Jonathan Helm is more in what's called operations research,
Mhm.
and Amro is in what's called operations management,
Mhm.
which tends to be sort of the more applied side.
Mhm.
And they're just really interesting guys doing work that I think is important.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that sounds really good. I mean, if anything, like I want them to tell me like if what I'm doing is over ambitious or not ambitious enough, or does it make sense
Mhm.
what I'm trying to build, or maybe they have suggestions of something else to build. Yeah, that would be totally awesome.
Okay, so yeah, I'll reach out to them, and we'll probably do that on Monday, and then yeah, we'll take it from there. I mean, they should be willing to talk, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I understand people are busy, but yeah, try please, and we'll see how it goes. As for the lecture, do you need it to be this Thursday, or could it be the next one?
Yeah, next one's fine.
Yeah, let's do next one so that
Okay.
I don't stress out too much.
All
And
right.
how long, how much time do you want me to spend?
It can be short, it can be long, doesn't matter.
Okay, so around like 30 minutes is good enough. It's good time.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. I mean, when David did it, you said, maybe this will run 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, he was at least an hour.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, he had a lot of, I think what he mentioned, like he had a lot of cool visuals, right? So I think people respond to that kind of thing.
True. Yeah. It's always fun to see that. But,
Yeah.
it's just, from my perspective, it's just really important for my students to start thinking more broadly about what this world is going to look like.
Mhm.
And if they have a sense of what it's going to look like, it's going to enable them to navigate it much better.
Yeah,
So,
makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah.
The Kalman filter for humanity.
Yes, yes, yes. KFM,
Yeah, you can brand it.
KFH, excuse me.
All right. I guess next time we can talk about that idea you had with the pricing thing that you mentioned. It reminded me of something I'm studying now with control theory that I think might help with that. It's basically basically what you're trying to solve is a control, you're trying to design an optimal controller that minimizes something, which is in this case is, let's say, maximizes your profit, right? And then you have to control is how much of the thing you're selling at a given time. And so there are systems that do that exactly, like they're meant to minimize energy or some costs versus minimize the
Okay.
time. So you can trade off between the time and the money that you're sort of spending. Yeah, I can send you some references on that. But I mean, of course, these are for dynamical systems of, cars and pulleys and things of that sort, not for the financial institution. But maybe there could be a machine learning approach to that.
Yeah, but the technology may wind up being pretty similar.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is you need kind of to know the dynamics a little bit or be able to simulate it. So those are the two things you need. If you can do either of those, then you can do that approach. But yeah, we can talk about that later.
Okay, well,
all right. Well, thank you. So I guess we'll set it up for not this Thursday, the next one, and then we'll confirm.
Terrific. It's great.
Okay, awesome.
All right,
Take
thanks,
care.
Tom. Bye.
Cheers.